Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kapijana Ballava Girivanadai Jaya Gopijana Ballava Girivanadai Yasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Ballava Girivanadai Jaya Gopijana Ballava Girivanadai Yasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai. Jaya Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai, Gora Nitai, Jaya Gora Nitai. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Lalita Vishaka Jaya Radhe Sham, Lalita Vishaka Jaya Radhe Sham. Jaya Lalita Vishaka Jaya Radhe Sham, Lalita Vishaka Jaya Radhe Sham. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Or Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. Jayam Vishnu Paramahansa Parvakacharya Satatam. His Divine Loving Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki. Jayam Vishnu Paramahansa Parvakacharya Satatam. His Divine Loving Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koi Vaishnavinda ki. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki. Pramachakor Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sambakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki. Vrindavan Dham ki. Mayapur Dham ki. Navadvip Dham ki. Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Garanga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're studying this evening from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 14. Beautiful verse. And I pray Srila Prabhupada inspires me to say something that will inspire you in your devotional life. Satatam kīrtayanto mam.
Satatam kīrtayanto mam.
Yatantaś dṛḍha-vratāḥ. Namasyantaś mam bhaktyā. Nitya-yuktā upāsate.
Satatam kīrtayanto mam.
Satatam kīrtayanto mam.
Yatantaś dṛḍha-vratāḥ. Namasyantaś mam bhaktyā. Nitya-yuktā upāsate.
Nitya-yuktā upāsate. Satatam kīrtayanto mam.
Yatantaś dṛḍha-vratāḥ. Namasyantaś bhaktyā.
nitya-yuktā upāsate.
Nitya-yuktā upāsate.
Satatam kīrtayanto mam.
Satatam kīrtayanto mam.
Yatantaś
Yatantaś
namasyantaś mam bhaktyā.
namasyantaś mam bhaktyā.
Nitya-yuktā upāsate.
Nitya-yuktā upāsate. Satatam kīrtayanto mam. Yatantaś namasyantaś mam bhaktyā.
Nitya-yuktā upāsate. Satatam kīrtayanto mam. Yatantaś dṛḍha-vratāḥ. Namasyantaś mam bhaktyā. Nitya-yuktā upāsate.
Satatam kīrtayanto mam. Yatantaś dṛḍha-vratāḥ. Nitya-yuktā upāsate. Satatam. Always. Kīrtayantaḥ. Chanting. Mam. About me. Yatantaḥ. Fully endeavoring. Cha. Also. dṛḍha-vratāḥ. With determination. Namasyantaḥ. Offering obeisances. Cha. And. Mam. Me. Bhaktyā. In devotion. Nitya-yuktā. Perpetually engaged. Upāsate. Worship. Translation. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Please repeat. Always chanting my glories.
always chanting my glories,
Endeavoring with great determination. Bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. What is that? A saw upstairs? Oh, lovely. Okay. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Kṛṣṇa, the Personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising his holy name, his eternal form, his transcendental qualities, and his uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmajyoti, is not described as Mahatma. In the Bhagavad Gita, he is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being. That is devotion, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnur, and Smaranam, remembering him. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything, in the service of the Supreme Lord. Sri Krishna. That is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadasi, and on the appearance day of the Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. The Mahatmas, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the 2nd verse of this chapter, not only is the devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master and in any position, either as a householder or a sannyas or a brahmachari. In any position and anywhere in the world, he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul. Omagana Timrandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksu Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadam Mayam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvarutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vindavanishwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam pavanevyo vaishnavevyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you so much for attending. This class up here on the English side has kind of gotten light ever since we moved out of the Prabhupada's quarters, but it's nice. It seems like it's beginning to come back a little more. So this chapter 9 is titled The Most Confidential Knowledge. Herein, Krishna is describing one who has attained the most confidential knowledge. Mahātmā, it means a great soul. Duratma, Dharmatma is a crippled-hearted soul, the opposite. A Jivatma, that is spirit soul. That's who we are, the Jivatma. And they're described as 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. That's called splitting hairs. Very small, very tiny. So how is it that a Mahātmā, a Jiva, can be called a Mahātmā? The Shastras say that the Jiva is small. I think the word is anu, whereas Maha means huge. So when the Jivatma takes full shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Paramatma, own transcendental qualities are able to work through that Jiva. They then become a Mahātmā. And a real Mahātmā never thinks of themselves as great. They always think of themselves as insignificant. When Krishna manifests his transcendental powers through a surrendered soul, wonderful things happen, as we have seen so many times. And even currently, we see that with devotees that are especially empowered, how they're doing wonderful, wonderful things all over the world. And of course, Prabhupada is our greatest example. And Krishna defines a Mahātmā here. We need to know how to spot one. Is that one who's always chanting his glories, endeavoring with great determination to serve him, bowing down before him. These devotees are constantly and continuously worshiping him with devotion, always chanting his glories. Not mundane topics, not pajapa, not glorifying themselves, not plastering selfies all over Facebook and TikTok. No, they are gathering people's attention and directing it towards Krishna. A person who is in contact with Krishna is always enthusiastic to serve the Lord, not their own senses. Enthusiasm is the life of a devotee. Srila Rupa Goswami says it's a major component of devotional service. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says if one doesn't have enthusiasm to serve the Lord, then one is like a dead man and makes no tangible spiritual advancement. Spiritual life is not a mechanical process. We don't want to fall into that rut where we're just mechanically doing things, where we go to class and we hear nice philosophical theories and conceptions, and they stay and float around in our heads. No, they need to be transferred into our hearts, and we need to practice this philosophy. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya one time visited, or many times, he visited Lord Jagannath, and he was standing near the Garuda Stamba when an elderly lady who was very small in stature, she comes in, and it was a very crowded temple room, and she wanted to see Lord Jagannath. This is Lord Jagannath. She was completely absorbed. Her body, her mind, her whole life was absorbed in Lord Jagannath. And she was very anxious to take his darshan. So in this crowded temple room, she climbed up the Garuda Stamba. And in doing so, she placed her foot on the shoulder of Lord Chaitanya, who was not only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was physical dress of a sannyas. And when Govindadas, his servant, saw this, he was like, oh my gosh, this woman, she's making offense to Garuda, she's making offense to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he brought her down. And at this time, Lord Chaitanya didn't see it that way. Lord Chaitanya's words were, when he saw her, she felt very bad for what she had done. But when Lord Chaitanya spoke, he said, alas, how fortunate this woman is. I pray at her feet that she favors me with her great eagerness to see Lord Jagannath. The Lord praised her. So enthusiasm is such a valuable quality. It's so valued by the Lord that he worships those who have it. And this is the real perfection of such preachers of this great philosophy, is to enthuse others to be engaged in devotional service of the Lord and chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra with enthusiasm. That's how tangible advancement is made in spiritual life. The supreme occupation for all humanity is to engage in the loving service of the Supreme Lord. One of the great ways devotees do this is when devotees do this, non-devotees actually become inspired. And we've seen that from devotees who do book distribution. They'll be out there distributing books. And I know a couple of devotees who were approached by what do they call company commanders, CPOs? Or sales managers. Anyway, they came up to the devotees and they offered them jobs. Will you come work for me? I'll pay you really good. And the devotees said, no, you're not the same. But they saw the enthusiasm in the devotee in distributing books to complete strangers. Actually, the transcendental nature of the Sankirtan process is like that, because you're so helpless when you're out there distributing books that you have to completely depend on Krishna to whatever happens, because you may have a great day where you distribute so many books, or you may have a terrible day where nobody wants any books, and we can't be attached to the results. Another great way to see just normal, not normal, actually, the conditioned soul's reactions is when they come to the temple and they see the deities. And they see how much love and devotion, the garlands, the beautiful outfits, the cleanliness of the temple, the enthusiasm of the devotees chanting, the programs that are offered. And a friend of mine's parents, actually, no, it was her grandparents came. And they were probably close to 80 at the time they came to the temple for the first time. And when the doors opened, her grandfather stood up, looked at the deities, and then he fell down and paid obeisances. He never saw them before in his life, but he was so touched by the beauty and the devotion that's apparent there in the deities. Another great demonstration of devotion and enthusiasm is our Rath Yatra festivals. And Prabhupada is so brilliant and so magnanimous to bring that all over the world, where actually the deity comes out of the temple. And anyone who sees him that day is liberated. And so many people who never go to a temple, will never see deities, they just happen to be at the park that day, and all of a sudden there's these beautiful carts. And who can deny they're strikingly beautiful? And if they actually go to the festival, there are different displays. There's displays explaining change of bodies. There's displays offering all kinds of wonderful foodstuffs. There's a question-answer booth. There's so many wonderful things. And if they want, there's clothes they can buy. So these Rath Yatra festivals are extremely powerful in spreading Krishna consciousness, because people, they've never had this taste before. This taste is transcendental. It's not something that's easily found in the material world. So without service, there can be no realization. In the 7th chapter, Krishna explains this concept very clearly. It's in text 17. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. For I am very dear to him, and he is very dear to me. Next verse. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes, and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So there's two types of knowledge. There's Gyan and Vigyan. Gyan is a philosophical understanding. But Vigyan is the realization, the realized knowledge. And there's a great example I've heard. It's like if you're sick, you have some physical illness, and you're actually found a great doctor you can go to who can give you wonderful medicine. And he gives you this great medicine. He tells you exactly how to take it, how many times a day, and what to do. And if you take that medicine home and just set it up on the shelf, and you tell all your friends, I've got some great medicine, it'll cure me. And you tell your family members, and you tell your neighbors, but you never take that medicine, it's not really going to do you any good. So that's why it's so important that what we hear, we have to encompass, we have to take it deep into our hearts and practice. So a person who doesn't do this, they may be able to discuss so many things about Bhagavad Gita. They may be able to discuss the time factor. They may be able to discuss the material energy, the modes of nature. They may be even able to talk about we're spirit soul, not these bodies. But that speaking will not be very effective because there's no real realization. So this knowledge is not meant just to entertain our intelligence. It's meant to change our hearts. It's meant to actually change the quality of our lives. And what is that essential quality that is meant to be changed? It's everything. It's that we must transfer our attachment for our senses to the attachment of serving Krishna and his senses. I had a very dear friend who had met somebody, and he was very impressed about him. They were both going to some kind of conference. That this person had memorized all 18,000 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this was Madhavananda, and he was like, oh, I couldn't wait to meet him. I was so impressed that somebody could do that. But when he got in the car, the guy came to pick him up, but when Madhavananda got in the car, and the guy is smoking a cigarette. So even though, what a waste, huh? He memorized all those verses. He hadn't realized one of them, not even a word from one of them. So by engaging our senses in the service of the Lord of the senses, our consciousness becomes purified because he purifies it. He becomes pleased with the devotee. He becomes pleased with the devotee's efforts. And because he's pleased, he will purify the consciousness. And when that consciousness is purified, the natural love we all have in our hearts awakens. And that is the only condition of life that will completely satisfy us. We all know the story of Prahlad Maharaj, and we know that he had the most demoniac father, Hiranyakasipu, who was so cruel to him, and consequently he was killed by Lord Nrsimhadev because of his offenses to his son. And so afterwards, Lord Nrsimhadev installed Prahlad on the throne. And it's explained that at one time, Prahlad was feeling eager to associate with some saintly persons. This is the nature of a devotee. They're always seeking out saintly association. And so he wanted to go and discuss transcendental matters with a saintly person. So he went And another reason is because when someone's in a big position, they're a king or a president or a ruler of some type, they tend to become proud. And if they have power, they become very proud. And this is actually a big weakness for someone serious in spiritual life. And so Prahlad, he was always ready to offer obeisances to a saintly person. So he went to the forest. Although he was the most powerful and wealthy, prestigious person in the universe, he was so anxious to meet some genuine sadhu. And while he was in the forest, he came across this one man who was laying on the ground. He was practically naked with dirt and grass and weeds all over his body. He hadn't moved in years. He was an avadut. He simply depended on Kṛṣṇa to provide whatever he needed. Now, this is a very advanced position. I don't believe that we have any avaduts in Kali Yuga around. But if Kṛṣṇa wanted to provide him, he just opened his mouth. He thought, if Kṛṣṇa wants to provide me, I'll just open my mouth. If Kṛṣṇa doesn't want to provide me, then I'll just shut my mouth. And so this is how he lived for years and years and years. And it's interesting because I've heard that there's enough nourishment in the air to maintain and support your body in full health for many, many years, that you can provide nutrients from the air. The only problem is we're not really on this platform. I'm not suggesting this by any means. Is that in Kali Yuga it's not possible. And that we now, most of us are just depending on our own efforts. Of course, we should not be lazy. But again, we have to take this principle into heart about depending on Kṛṣṇa and thinking of Kṛṣṇa all the time, and how anything that we have, it comes from Kṛṣṇa. So we're trying to understand the caliber of this great soul. And it was interesting because Prahlad was surprised when this man, as he got closer and he saw that even though he'd been laying like that and just eating with what was ever put in his mouth, he was fat. So he then, because he was struck with wonder, he then asked this great soul to speak. So after he offered his obeisances, this avadut, and can you imagine one of our great rulers offering obeisances? Maybe Modi would, but I can't see Trump or Putin or anyone else offering obeisances to a man in the jungle. But in previous ages, kings and rulers, they searched out spiritual advancement. And now it's completely lost. So this avadut, he was explaining to Prahlad that for many, many years I have lived in this world and I have seen many things. I've seen how people madly chase after the illusions of happiness in this world. But in the end, they only got frustrations, just like a mirage in the desert. Therefore, rather than following the concoctions of our minds and senses, one should follow the teachings of great souls who follow the teachings of God. By following such personalities, then we can attain that state of happiness that is already within us all. I see people very anxious for nice family life, very nice home, very nice business, very nice life. I have watched and examined very carefully to see what kind of happiness there is in these things. But all I see is frustration and pain. I see the serpent of death ultimately strike and painfully drag everything away from them. Therefore, in whatever condition of life one is in, the only happiness worthy of our human effort is happiness that is within us. The happiness of our relationship with God, the happiness of the realization of the eternal self. Therefore, he explained, I have no interest in the things of this material world. My only interest is in simply remembering Kṛṣṇa. My only interest is, with all the enthusiasm at my command, is to remember the Lord and glorify him and hear his transcendental qualities. So the lesson here is where none of us are going to lay in the forest. It's not recommended. But we can learn to depend on Krishna's mercy and see everything that comes to us as Krishna's mercy. And this is a principle that is essential for a sincere devotee to adapt. Therefore, the principle is that the goal of life is spiritual realization. The goal of life has nothing to do with prosperity or piety or astrology. The goal of life is not acquiring knowledge, nor mystical powers, nor a nice life. The goal of life is simply remembering Krishna. The goal of life is the enthusiastic, loving devotional service to Krishna and his devotees. So therefore, we use the rules and the regulations, and Srila Prabhupada and Srila Rupa Goswami have given us quite a few, but we use them to help us on this path to regulate and control our mind and senses, to help us remember Krishna. But our effort is to somehow or another to associate with those persons who inspire us to enthusiastically serve and love the Lord. It's a personal process. Krishna is a person with senses. And so we can think of him in that personal way, like we think of other people or have thought of other people, because he's actually ultimately our dearest, most companion. When we are enthusiastic to serve the Lord, to chant his holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and to assist him and his devotees in his mission, it pleases the Lord. It's through this process, when he is pleased, that he cleanses all the illusions and all the misconceptions and all the unwanted desires from our hearts and all the anarthas. So Krishna conscious means to center our lives around Krishna. Yat karosi, yat asnasi. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. We can only serve with love. One can't serve unless they have love. We cannot really serve someone without love. We have to understand that God is a sentient being. Krishna's energy is everywhere, and it's very attractive. Sometimes it seems it's all we can see in this material world. But, like Srila Prabhupada describes, this energy of Krishna is like electricity. It comes from the powerhouse. So Krishna is the supreme source, the cause of all causes. So when we see something that's in the material world that attracts us, we know this is not what it seems. This is Krishna's energy. So thank you very much for listening. Does anybody want to add anything? Or yes? Speak loudly, because I don't hear very well.
Thank you, Mataji. The examples that you gave from real life as well were very helpful. I just have one question about how to balance depending on Krishna with balancing our own endeavor in achieving.
That's a good question, because we all deal with that. And it depends on what our life is. We all have an ashram, a varna. We should follow that. So if we're a student, we study hard. We get good grades. We're serious about our if we were a business person, we take our business seriously. If we're a parent, we see our child as a gift from Krishna, and we serve and take care of that child and raise them to be devotees. We see our husbands as Krishna's devotee, and a husband sees his wife as Krishna's devotee, and that Krishna has given me this responsibility to care for this person. So in whatever our varna ashram, we just put Krishna in the center. It's very simple. We just add Krishna. It's like that example there, that, if you have so many zeros, you have nothing. 0, 0, 0, 0. But you add 1 to it, and you have so much. So if we put Krishna in the center of whatever we are meant to do, then that's the perfection of life.
Right. Thanks for a wonderful class. Like in the purport of the last paragraph of the purport,
Uh-huh.
This said that as described in the second verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood.
Yeah.
One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. So, penance and austerity need not go. Devotional service normally, like, we do go some austerity, getting up early in the morning and
Yeah.
How do you understand that it's in a happy mood, like we can.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Is that, there's so many very extreme austerities that one can perform. Like the yogis, they sit surrounded by fire, or they sit in water in the cold. And, there's all these, and it's not recommended. But our austerities are there is some pinch of austerity there, especially if you're not used to getting up in the morning. After you get used to it, it's not so painful anymore. And then same with the fasting, if it's possible. Prabhupada, he said you have to be practical. And so if you have a physical condition that makes you ill if you fast, then don't fast. In fact, one time, this was in Dallas, my god sister was preparing Prabhupada's meals. He was coming to Dallas. And so somebody came and said, well, Lord Nityananda's appearance day is tomorrow, so Prabhupada won't have any breakfast. So she didn't make any breakfast for Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada came and he gave his address and he went to his room and then he rang his bell. And he says, I'll take my breakfast now. She said, oh, Prabhupada, I thought you were fasting because it's Lord Nityananda's appearance. He says, well, you can fast with fruit and nuts and curd. So, you have to be practical. But it's kind of a natural inclination of a devotee to be a little austere. Because the less they're thinking of their own sense enjoyment, the more they're thinking of how to serve. So sometimes you have to really tell some devotees, you have to find the balance. Because we don't want to make our bodies unhealthy and sickly. You can't do service in that condition. So you need to have a balance in your life so that you take good care of your health. Prabhupada actually said that in Hawaii. So the health is number one. And then, but yeah, it's an austerity to chant until we get the taste. Until we get the taste of the holy name. There is a bit of an austerity there to the discipline, to chant, and to really focus on that holy name until we can get to the point where we find it pleasurable and necessary. Yeah. Good question.
I have one.
Yeah.
Can I ask this? One thing, like, we say that when we are in a family householder, we consider our family as, of course, they are all children of Krishna, so we have to take care of them. So when we say we should be detached, but one should be detached, one should not be too much attached with, for that matter, anyone. So how to balance this? Like, one should not be attached to the family, that take care also. So it's a little confusing, like how exactly it should be.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is that we can't be attached in the way that we're indulging our family in sense gratification. We want them to be Krishna conscious. So we're going to indulge them in Krishna conscious activities, which are very pleasurable. It's very pleasurable to participate in festivals, to go to the temple, to chant in kirtan. These are very pleasurable activities. And same with the children. They can learn to appreciate, and children learn so much from watching their parents, more than you know. They learn more than what you tell them. You tell them, behave, don't do that. But if you do it, forget it. They will do it. So be a good example to the children, and they will automatically follow your example. But yeah, it's a bit of a trick because we have to do it with love. Unfortunately, we were trying to make, and in my generation, we tried to make the children Krishna conscious, and maybe a little too much so, because we tried to force them. And it wasn't natural, so a lot of them didn't really want to deal with us like that. So we have to be extremely loving. Srila Prabhupada was extremely loving, extremely compassionate. And he never felt that, even when he would get angry, he would be all right in a couple of minutes later. But if he got angry, he had a very good reason to be angry, you know. It wasn't like there was no reason or it was cruel or anything like that. But, yeah, we have to become good devotees first. And that's really, we need to discipline ourselves and become attached to Krishna. And then automatically people will be attracted by that. Even the family. So, but sometimes that doesn't happen. And like in Prabhupada's example, you know, he tried so hard to get his family to help him in his mahātmā programs. And unfortunately, you know, his wife was more interested in drinking tea. But you know what's interesting is later on in his son, one of his sons became very favorable later. At first he was angry. He admitted, he's passed now, but he admitted he was angry with his father at first because of what happened. But then he became actually a very nice devotee and became himself. So sometimes it takes a little longer than we like, and we may not even be around to see it. So we just do the best we can.
But the detachment part should be, like, one should not be attached too much to even the family, because
attachment. Attachment is going to be natural,
yeah,
because that's part of. It's part of the human nature. But you know, like the Avadut was saying, that there's at some point this living entity is going to be taken away from you, one way or another. And the reality of that should keep us focused on Krishna. Because, yeah, we're going to have some attachments, but we also know that nothing in this material world is permanent. Anything can be taken away at any time. And so if we use this attachment to help them become Krishna conscious, then that's going to be very purifying in itself. Hare Krishna. So, Haiti, Tantrash, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.